Our next story here about Russell Brand and Cornel West. Now, they had a discussion recently. It was great seeing those two together about the future of neoliberalism. And I think you'll find this discussion pretty interesting. I thought it was really cool to see these two pair up. Now, the name of this video is called Neoliberalism is Dying with Dr. Cornel West, episode 93, Stay Free with Russell Brand preview. So the full episode of this is probably on Rumble because he's one of the people that have the Rumble exclusive shows. Here we go.
Welcome, Dr. Cornel West. Hello, sir.
Oh, my dear brother, and I salute you there, brother. You the real thing, though, man. You got the courage to be yourself. You got the courage to take a risk. But most importantly, you're a truth teller and a witness bearer.
Thank you for saying that. It's so kind. I was a little bit scared to meet you because I've been going on a lot of right-wing media, what are called right-wing media outlets. I watched you, of course, on Joe Rogan, and we'd been trying to get you as a guest before that. I've looked at some of your masterclass philosophy course. I admire you a great deal. And when I talk about liberal politics, progressive politics, when I talk about the left, one of the voices that I hold in my head and my heart is yours. And I've began to feel that liberal media has become so disconnected from the people that they're supposed to represent, that the British Labour Party have become disconnected from the people they're supposed to represent, that the Democrat Party is no longer a voice of bringing people together, but in my view uses cultural issues to drive people apart and are disingenuous even in their apparent support of previously and let's face it, currently oppressed cultural groups. Dr. West, what do you think is happening in our culture? What is our duty in media spaces? How can we bring about a new unity when people are living with so much fear? Thank you.
I think we need two things, my brother. One is we need a truthful analysis. And the analysis has to be one in which it focuses on the precious lives of poor and working people, no matter what color they are, wretched of the earth from around every corner of the globe. But that means keeping a focus on what you actually do.
Okay, let's talk about this piece here that Dr. West mentions. We need to keep the focus on poor and working class people, and I 100% agree. This is where the focus should be. And for me, that means not focusing on the left-right divide, because there are poor and working class people on the right too. We just have to be real about that. But that's where the focus should be. This is something that Shama Sawant understands. She started Worker Strike Back. That's kicked off in multiple cities across the country. This is where we should put our focus, not on who's primary in Joe Biden. You know, no shade to anyone that's doing that, but I'm sorry, but like, that's not helping working class and poor people. Not on, I guess I should say the Kardashians. A lot of people focus on them. Not on what happened with Kim Kardashian. Not on AOC versus Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, not on those things. We really need to put most of our focus on helping people who are working class and people who are poor. And there are many different ways that you can do that. You can do that through mutual aid. You can do that through direct action. You can do that actually also through worker co-ops, depending on what the worker co-op is. But you also do that by building community with people. And you cannot build community with people if you stay in a bubble. And people have to really understand that. I know some people don't feel comfortable going across like party lines, but when it comes to certain issues, particularly one like healthcare, particularly one like increasing American lifestyle so that we can have a living wage in this country for people. Those are issues that affect people on the left and people on the right. And don't forget those who are not politically active at all. What I think we need to do is we really need to mobilize the non-voters. We need to mobilize the people that checked out of politics altogether because they realized the system was rigged. We need to mobilize the people that stopped voting many years ago because they realize none of these presidents are actually going to change anything that's going to impact their lives. We need to mobilize the people that may be registered independents, but they also kind of checked out because they realize if I'm just going to vote Democrat or Republican, what's the point of being independent? And we need to mobilize those people on issues that matter to their lives, not issues such as left versus right, so to speak, not the culture war issue. We need to organize those people on issues such as being anti-war. That is a big one. A lot of people that I've spoken to in this country really not for these wars. We need to mobilize people on those issues. We need to mobilize people on issues about getting some type of a significant living wage. The fact that people in this country are still making $7.25 an hour is disgusting. We need to mobilize people around that. We need to mobilize people in this country around healthcare. Now, there have been marches across this country for Medicare for all. The politicians checked out, even the ones that told you that they supported it and they ran on it. We have to find ways to put pressure on those politicians so that they do bring that Medicare for all bill to the floor, so that they do feel that pressure to pass that type of legislation. But I really think the focus, if we want to organize people who are working class and people who are poor, I think we need to focus on the non-voters, because a lot of them checked out a long time ago and they feel forgotten about.
Military complex, the militarism abroad, and Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and big money. Big money and big military have become what the monarchs and the oligarchs were many hundreds of years ago. They have power that's unaccountable, unanswerable, and irresponsible. And
big money and big military. See what I was saying about those who are anti-war, those who are working class, and those who are poor? Because even when you look at the banking situation right now with Silicon Valley Bank and everyone saying that the banks are being bailed out, if you get down into the weeds of it, you'll see that it's people that had investments in those banks that are being bailed out. It's people like Peter Thiel. It's people like Ro Khanna. It's people like Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Those are the people that are being rescued right now. And I'm pretty sure, I'm going to make an assumption here, but they have a lot more money than all of us.
It's so easy to get caught in issues of race and gender and sexual orientation. It's very important. White supremacy is vicious. Male supremacy is vicious. Homophobia, transphobia are vicious. Anti-Jewish, anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, they're ugly. But if we lose sight of what is going on in the American empire and the Russian empire and the Chinese empire when it comes to highly centralized forms of power and authority that's crushing everyday people and ordinary people, we don't have the right kind of analysis. But you also need vision. And this is where your stress on spirituality is crucial, on morality, indispensable. Why? Because people are feeling nihilistic, they're feeling impotent, they're feeling helpless and hopeless, and they're feeling as if there's nothing we can do. That's not true. Waves of awakening, waves of spiritual and moral renaissance can take place. They have taken place. When? When you got courageous brothers and sisters, artists like yourself, truth tellers like so many others, trying to, the Chris Hedges and others, trying to be honest, the Matt Diabis and others trying to be honest and saying, look, neoliberalism is dying.
You heard it, guys, here, folks. You heard it here first. Or if you saw that, you saw them there first, but you heard it. Neoliberalism is dying. People are starting to pay attention to their material needs more. And I think the elite find that to be very threatening. I really do. I think that there's a reason why you're seeing CNN refer to the protests in France in such a way that actually demonizes the protesters. How dare they ask for anything? They already have some of the best benefits. You see how this is all connected? It's the media, the mainstream media. You have the elites, you have the bankers, you have the politicians, you have the mouthpieces for the politicians. All of these people work together to stop you and me from actually getting anywhere in this country. They have destroyed the middle class. and they don't care because they're still paid. And even if they were to lose their job tomorrow, or if they were sued tomorrow, like we talk about Norfolk Southern, they're being sued by the state of Ohio, they will still be fine. These companies have a lot of money, and shares as well. They have stock. They're not going to go under. It would take a lot for a company like BlackRock to go under. You know what I'm saying? They own almost everything. It would take a lot for a Vanguard group to go under. And they know that. So even when these companies get sued, if they have shareholders like BlackRock and Vanguard, they're still going to be okay. Replace them with one of us. What if we lost our job? If you lost your job tomorrow, would you be okay? Do you have enough stashed away for a rainy day? Would you be able to pay rent next month if you lost your job tomorrow? This is why we need to really focus on this and not these things that keep us divided every time.
One of the things
Neo-fascism is escalating. The American empire is wrestling with spiritual decay and moral decrepitude, in part because centralized power at the highest levels of our economy and tied to military, with its politicians bought off by big money and war profiteering elites, are making citizens feel as if they are nothing but consumers, nothing but commodified entities. So that truth-telling and the visionary work becomes crucial. And that's what I've seen you do over these years, though, brother. I'm telling you, man, it's a beautiful thing to behold.
This is why you need people like, you need to have the truth tellers. You need people like a Russell Brand. You need people like a Glenn Greenwald. You need people like, and as much as people get mad at Jimmy Dore, you need people like a Jimmy Dore to cut through the bullshit. You need people like Matt Taibbi to cut through the bullshit. And that may mean that they may get smeared. They will get smeared. And mainstream media usually is the main culprit. But if these people are being smeared the way that they're being smeared, you need to ask yourself why. What are they saying that mainstream media doesn't like? What are they saying that billionaires don't like? What are they saying that makes them so nervous? Think about that.
Thank you for saying that, because your praise is a meaningful balm at a time where I've felt, if not attacked, because I also get a lot of love. I come from a world of entertainment, so I'm somewhat praise oriented, I have to be honest. But I have felt, sometimes I felt, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right way to conduct this conversation? You've brought up so much, even in your first response there. I've been considering for a while that materialism, rationalism, and post-Enlightenment values have led inexorably, even if inadvertently, to a state of nihilism such as you describe, that it's very difficult with populations of scale to instantiate a centralized set of values, ethics, and meaning. And it appears that this divisiveness that I feel that somehow the culture is benefiting from has become worse and worse in recent years. A few just like placeholder arguments to consider, Cornel, as we hopefully advance our conversation, sir, is my friend Adam Curtis, the documentary maker, who said, no one ever made a left-wing case for Brexit. No one has, and I would add to that, no one has ever considered what the emotional timbre of Trump was, what it is that he reaches in people, what it is beyond the rhetoric and divisiveness, what it is within that emotional quality that is reaching people. Given that this is a contemporary news show that we are streaming right now, it's worth bringing up an issue that's becoming somewhat defining of our time, the January 6th insurrection. It seems impossible to say that both those events and the Black Lives Matter uprisings in the summer of the murder of George Floyd are in a sense a demonstration of the problems that centralized authority will always bring about. That until we have a time where people that corral around these separate issues, these separate publics, before these separate, if these separate publics cannot recognize that ultimately they have to confront the same authority, we will not experience the kind of unity that both of us apparently crave. How do you think we?
Right. We all have to understand at some point that we are all under the same boot. We're all being stepped on by the same people. Some more so than others, but we have to understand that. And I think once everyone comes together to understand that, that's how you have a class movement. That's how you have it. What Russell Brand speaks to here is important because he's making the case for the fact that someone like Trump was able to win because he spoke to the people who were forgotten about. He speaks to the case about the George Floyd protest. Thousands and thousands of people coming out in the street to protest. Because again, people who were forgotten about. People were able to look at that video of George Floyd and say, nah, this isn't right. And we can't let another police officer get away with it this time. Because people like George Floyd, unarmed Black men, have been forgotten about. And it's the forgotten people that really need to be rallied. You have to bring those people together. You speak to people who feel like they have been forgotten about in such a way to let them know that you see them and you understand what has happened to them. Oh, they're going to come out and support you. And that's how someone like Trump was able to win. Meanwhile, you had people like Hillary Clinton opposed to even go and talk to people in the Rust Belt. Pretentious much. More concerned about looking good to the suburban couple and less about looking good to the people who are working class. It is the forgotten people that a lot of times they've just given up. Just given up. Don't want any part of this political system. But when you speak to them and you let them understand that you know they've been forgotten about, that's when they come out, and they come out strong.
Have to frame the conversation both for people on the neoliberal establishment left, but also for people that identify with patriotism and what are called these days right-wing politics, so that we can overcome and not only accept but love and embrace cultural difference in order to meaningfully confront these forms of centralized media, political, financial and military authority that are thriving in this climate of division, sir.
Yeah, I think we always want to begin with a fundamental commitment to wrestling with what it means to be human. Because when you get to our deep humanity, that functions at a level that is much more profound than what color, than what gender, what sexual orientation, while we're all wrestling with organized greed at the top especially, but across the board. We're all wrestling with various forms of hatred and self-doubt inside of us. We have to be honest and candid with ourselves, just as we're honest and candid with the powers that be. That's precisely what the legacy of the Martin Luther King Jr. and the Fannie Lou Hamers and the Ella Bakers and the John Coltrane's and the Aretha Franklin. And I was listening to a little loose ends, and I was listening to a little soul to soul for my British connection here. What? When you listen to that music, my brother, it touches your soul. The soul is always deeper than what color you are.
Speaking of the music, John Coltrane, I got to give a big nod to that one. I love jazz, and like John Coltrane, in my opinion, if you have never listened to jazz, start with that. Not Kenny G. Definitely start with that. I can listen to John Coltrane's albums every day, and it will move you. There's a song that John Coltrane has called Alabama. It's about the girls, I think it was 4 black girls that were burned in a church. It's called Alabama. So if you read the story about what happened to those girls and then you listen to the song, it's almost like the song is telling you the story, even though John Coltrane is not singing. He's just playing the saxophone, but you feel it in his music. So I had to give a shout out there for that.
Deeper than your gender. That's why the arts become important. That's why you love Richard Pryor. That's why if Pryor was alive, he'd love you. He'd say, oh, this brother's the real thing. He's like George Carlin. He's telling the truth coming from his soul, but unique voice. Now, of course, the voice of black, the national anthem of black people is what? Lift every voice, not lift every echo. We're not going to be an extension of an echo chamber. Neo-fascist, right-wing, neoliberal Democratic Party, both of them, not just inadequate, both of them are major obstacles at this point for the empowerment of everyday people. So that
both parties are obstacles right now for the empowerment of the everyday people. This is what people really, really have to grasp. And he's 100% right. This is why we play this game of Democrats in power right now. Next time around, people vote Republican and they're like, things are going to change this time. Things don't change. And it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth because people, at least the American people, really have been brainwashed in a sense to believe that the political party that you choose, at least for the position of the White House position, is actually going to determine how well your life is going to be economically. It's going to make a difference in your life economically. And I think a lot of us, especially my generation, those of us that are millennials, we've seen over the past couple of years, nope. This is what people in France understand. People in France realize, look, I don't care if Macron, if you're Democrat, whatever, or neoliberal, we don't care. You're not raising our retirement age. We want you to stop this war with Russia and Ukraine. We don't want to say no to NATO. We don't care what political party you are affiliated with. If you step on our rights and our benefits, we will push back on you. Now, you can't tell me that all those people that are out in the street in Paris, you can't tell me all those people are socialists. You can't tell me all those people in Paris are lefties, so to speak. If you gather people together on the economic issues, that is how you can create these mass movements about wealth inequality in these countries. We should look to countries like France. We should look to countries in the global south. They come together on the economic issues.
Again, the spiritual dimension, the moral sensitivity becomes important. And then, for example, when you go to Trump's people and you say, lo and behold, they're not homogeneous, they're heterogeneous. Some of them are racist, some of them are less racist. Most of them catching hell. Most of them are wounded economically. Most of them feeling as if they have been losers in the corporate globalization in the last 50 years. They are right about that.
And we need to ask ourselves exactly, why do they hold those beliefs in the first place? You know, a lot of times, like, there's this tendency to have a scapegoat. So having lived in the South, in certain parts, especially some of the rural parts in the South, when the 2008 housing crisis happened, everybody was blaming everybody. Everybody was pointing fingers. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's the immigrants' fault. It's Black people's fault. It's those of you who are on welfare. It's your fault. It's everybody's fault except for the people at the top. And everybody was mad at the wrong people. You know, it's just like, even people point fingers at George W. Bush. He was just a puppet. Billionaires are more powerful than him. So instead of pointing fingers at companies like BlackRock, instead of pointing fingers at people like Larry Fink, because most people don't even know what BlackRock is. Instead of pointing fingers at Jeff Bezos, instead of pointing fingers at the people who hold that amount of concentrated wealth, we were pointing fingers at each other. And the duopoly is a part of that. It makes you point fingers at each other. Everybody blaming their neighbor instead of blaming the people at the top. And that's what they want you to do. They want you to blame your neighbor. They don't want you to talk to your neighbor. They don't want you to trust your neighbor, but they want you to trust these banks. Make it make sense for me.
We got to bring serious critique to bear on any kind of white supremacist, male supremacist, homophobic or transphobic sensibilities that they might have, but also recognize they are human beings just like us. And the fundamental question is the question that you've wrestled with and I've wrestled with. What does it mean to be a wounded healer rather than a wounded hurter? If you're wounded and then you're going to somehow demonize the vulnerable rather than confront the most powerful, you're going to end up with a right-wing populism rather than a progressive populism, or most importantly, in the language of Sheldon Wolin, my dear brother Bernard Harcourt, his new book on the cooperative movement, on Nancy Fraser's cannibal capitalism. What are they talking about? Solidarity. But you can't have solidarity unless you have analysis and vision enacted by persons like yourself and others that say, you know what, I'm going to put myself out here and try to exemplify the very thing I'm calling for.
Well said. I think you can see, again, the rest of this interview, the full interview, on Rumble. Because I think what Russell Brand does is he takes like a clip of the full video and he puts it on YouTube, and then he'll put the rest on Rumble. But the name of this video again is Neoliberalism is Dying with Dr. Cornel West, and that's on Russell Brand's channel. Definitely check out the full video when you get an opportunity to do so on Rumble. But 100%, I agree. I think neoliberalism is dying too. I don't think it really means anything anymore, like, to be honest. Thanks for the super chat, 2008 B. Scott. I have a question for y'all. Is Cornel West now a right-winger for going on to Russell Brand? I wonder if the TYT left is going to be consistent in throwing that slander around or making an exception. That's a good point. That's a good point. Very good points, guys. Like, yeah, there doesn't seem to be consistency sometimes with who they consider to be, right wing.